Welcome back. I knew it. Welcome back. It was 18 months ago today that we made that difficult decision, but important decision to close this building for a little while, but we're back. And no matter who you are, whether you are in this beautiful, beautiful Cathedral of Love and Temple of Peace with us right now, or whether you're still filtering in, or whether you are at home watching from the comfort and safety of your home, you belong here, and we are so profoundly grateful to be with you this morning at 10 o'clock in this worship service. There have been a lot of changes around here, huh? And among those changes is this dynamic team you see before you. None of this would have been possible today without this amazing team before you, and it felt like it would have been just wild to launch into today without lifting up their names and their presence among us. And so I wanted to take a moment to welcoming you by welcoming them. I'm going to start down here. Jonathan Tuke is our organist, and we are so grateful for his profound gifts. Thank you, Jonathan. We're so grateful to have you back with us. We have a very fresh new face, Austin. Austin is our choir director. And you'll be hearing from the choir soon. They've only had just a few weeks to come together to support our worship. So welcome, Austin, and welcome, choir. Thank you. This is a new and not new at all face. Lydia is the children and youth director. When I made the decision to bring back Lydia, it was immediately affirmed in me why I did. She is just a machine of a person, and it's such a gift to have you on our team. We have a very fresh new face, Sam. Sam is one of our custodial staff. You'll be seeing her around. And we are so grateful to have you with us, Sam. Thank you. And a longer time face, we have Jamie, who is our new head custodian. It has been such a gift, and we're so excited that Jamie is now fully a part of our staff, and that's something that we dreamed for a long time. So thank you, Jamie. And the veteran staff member, Melissa Jose. Melissa is the one that makes the things happen that we don't always understand how they happen, but they happen. So. And I texted her this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, and I'm sorry to bother you on the day off, but this, and that. And she was like, did it, took care of it, done last week. So thank you, Melissa. And another very new face, Reverend Greta Joe. And I know that you've seen these faces. You've seen quite a bit of Reverend Greta Joe on a screen, but it's much different when you see all of these wonderful people in person. I would also be remiss if I didn't lift up all of the technical people that make all of it possible. So in the back, I see three different people. I see Connor Bardalis. Oh my gosh, thank you, Connor. Give us a wave. And we also have Cliff back there. Put your hand up. Yep, that's you. And we've got Dick Wood, who's one of our profound volunteers. Oh, and way up there we have one of our also new, like I said, it's a season of change. One of our other newest members, Derek. He is the new manager of productions, or productions manager. Thank you, Derek. Gosh, I should have written it all down. And then you cannot see them, but in the back sound room we have staff. It's a menagerie of folks who really make the inner workings go. And so I just wanted to make sure that we took in the profound gravitas of how this team is what really keeps us going forward. I'm also indebted to our governing board and to our officers who have helped get us to this point and letting this group come together. And just to make it awkward, I would like you all to give yourselves a round of applause because, frankly, you have put up with a lot over these 18 months. So thank you. We thank you for your resilience and your flexibility and your support and your showing up and being a part of this work with us. So we are going to have a service today, and it's going to look very different from other services and very similar to others. And I want you to know that nothing stays the same. We've been in that season for 18 months, and it will continue. So what might feel like reality today might feel a little different next week, and it's going to feel a little different after that. And so for today, Reverend Greta Joe and I are going to lead a lot of the service, and that's just because we wanted to eliminate the variables. But as the weeks go on, we want to invite more congregational involvement, more readers, more greeters, more welcomers, all of that. We want to have you see yourselves in these services. So as you sit and join for worship today, I hope you recognize that that'll be something that we hope to evolve and grow in these coming weeks. So I could ramble forever, but you're going to hear me do that later. So without further ado, thank you, staff, and thank you, everybody, for being here.
Good morning. It's so weird to hear people say hello back. And it's really weird not to type on a computer good morning to all of you on our virtual space, because I've been saying like, good morning, nice to be with you. So it is still nice to be with you if you're joining us that way. As Christopher mentioned, it's pretty new. Even if you have been a member of this congregation for 40 years, it is new in many ways to be back to this space, which is why our title for this morning's service was Welcome Back for the First Time. So I'm going to give what might be announcements, what might be like orientation to this space, whether you've been here before or whether you're brand new. So first of all, there are some COVID precautions in place, and fortunately, looking out at those of you in person, thank you for helping us make those possible, for wearing your masks properly, for giving some space between you and other households, and thank you to those of you who have decided that it feels better for you to join us virtually, and we're glad that we can have that option for you to be with us as well. We also have this new bracelet system that you may or may not have seen on your way in. There's, think a stoplight, red, yellow, and green. And they help us have what I would call consent conversations about who we are and how we're going to be together. So think of a red bracelet as being like, I'm here, but I want to keep my distance. I want a mask. I might be high risk. I might be caring for those who are high risk. So please, let's keep our distance. Yellow is like in the middle, like maybe come a little closer, but let's not touch, let's not hug. Maybe, like in my case, I've got unvaccinated kiddos at home that I'm taking care of. And then green means maybe I'll take high fives, hugs, stand right next to me, come take a seat, that sort of thing. Again, I invite you to have conversations around that, but it's to help you get started. And then I invite you to return them at the end of service so that we can reuse them in coming weeks. They'll be sanitized and put back out and all that good stuff. There's a couple other things that are a little bit different about today's service. If you've been here before, you know that there's often children's programming up on our second floor. Due to our COVID precautions, everybody over the age of 3, a little bit later in the service, will be invited to go to the social hall, where there's an all ages, different stations. Lydia's got it all planned out and awesome and decorated, really cool. If you saw it on your way in, it looks really fun. All ages, and I mean all ages, are also welcome to stay here. If that feels more comfortable for you and your family unit, you can stay here and be with us for the whole of worship. We will not pass the offering plate today as a way of saving time and also contact with each other. So the offering plates will be available at the back of the narthex on your way out the door. And we invite you to use it as an embodied act of gratitude on your way out of the building and back out into the wider world. That was probably enough, huh? Oh, I got one more. Sorry. There's one more box on the greeting table out there that says prayer for the people. We've been away from each other, and a lot's happened. And a lot continues to happen because the world keeps moving. So the prayer for the people is a way for us to share, whether it's a joy or whether it's a sorrow. They're little slips of paper where you can write your name and something that's happening that you might like shared in the service with everyone, or maybe you just want Reverend Christopher and I to know. And those will be brought to us, and they can be shared either as part of our prayer for the people or just kept in our confidence so that we know what's going on. It's okay if you didn't see them today. They'll be here next week. They'll be here after service. We're all getting used to this new swing, right? Okay. Y'all take a deep breath with me. I invite you to quiet your mind and calm your body as we enter into this space of worship together. And I have a call to worship written by the Reverend Hannah Roberts Villeneuve. The storm is passing over, the old hymn says. Except, the storm has not passed over just yet, has it? Here in this hour together, we rest in the eye of the storm. We gather not as changed people, but as a changing people. Here in the eye of the storm, the calm, common center, the place where the pressure reduces, where the winds die down, we are finding one another, near and far, in new ways of being together again and again and again. We gather not as a changed people, but as a changing people. At once we find an empty seat and a new face. We see new gray hairs and yet others who have grown 5 inches taller since the last time we were here. New lines of worry are on our furrowed brows, visible on Zoom screens and above masks. We gather not as a changed people, but as a changing people. Looking up the walls of the cyclone, we see towers of clouds and rain and wind held up around this hour by the forces of circling chaos. Because the storm has not passed over after all. And so we gather, not as a changed people, but as a... Here in the eye, the pressure goes down. The winds die down. Perhaps we glimpse the sun, comforted, even as we know that this pause is temporary. We take a moment, a breath, to join together again. We gather not as a changed people, but as a changing, breathing being, knowing that this is but a moment, grateful beyond measure for this moment. Let us worship together. I want to tell you a story, because the truth is people, we actually tell stories, and that's about all we do. And it's about how we learn. Now, in some orders of service, in some congregations, they would call this the kids' story or the kids' sermon. And yes, if you happen to fall into the category we refer to as children, hi, thanks for being here. I hope you'll listen. I hope the people sitting around you do too. This is a story called The Memory Table, and it's from the Creating Home curriculum by Christy Olson and Jessica York, adapted for Fountain Street. 7-year-old Stephen dragged his backpack home from the school, down this unfamiliar drive to his new house. You see, school was over for the day, but Stephen was not looking forward to going home. Because yesterday, this big truck had showed up and dumped all his stuff in boxes in this brand new house. And this morning, the house was a mess of half-open boxes here and there. He'd found his toothbrush, but not his toothpaste. And his mom had just sort of shrugged and said it must be in a different box. Stephen felt lonely and sad. Everywhere he had been all week was new. He didn't recognize the faces in his new school. The house didn't even greet him in the same way as the old. Stephen crossed through the threshold of his new house and he slammed the door behind him in frustration and then scoffed. Doesn't even slam the same way as the old one. Then he looked up and he saw his mom coming in for a home hug, capital H both times. See, that was his mom's specialty, this home hug. Stephen rolled his eyes and got ready, and there she came. He felt that familiar warmth and love as his mom hugged him. He smiled up at her, and he forgot his sadness as he breathed a little deeper. "Is that peanut butter cookies?" he said. Mom laughed, and Stephen bolted for the kitchen, running, and as he weighed his way closer, he got to the kitchen and he froze. There weren't any boxes. It was actually unpacked. And not only was it unpacked, but there was his dining table. That dining room table that had been in their dining room for as long as Stephen could remember. He walked over and he ran his fingers along it. And he looked down at it. Oh, and there was that big red Sharpie stain from when he was 2 years old and hadn't quite learned that he was supposed to have paper when he was drawing. Then he went a little bit further and he saw that nick from when his dad had dropped something during Thanksgiving dinner and taken a big chunk out. Oh, and then in the middle, there were those weird chicken salt and pepper shakers, but Grandma gave them to us, so, they're there. And then there was the marble center for doing Christmas cookie cutting. But best of all, on top of it was a plate of warm peanut butter cookies. His mom pulled up a chair at her normal spot. He pulled up a chair at his normal spot, and they got to work on those cookies. I know you've been sad, Stephen. You're missing all of the old things, and you're exhausted by all the new things. Sound familiar? How are you feeling now? Stephen munched on a cookie and said, "I was sad until I saw the table." "What did the table do to make you feel better?" his mom asked. "Well, I started thinking about all the things that had happened at this table. We've had Thanksgiving dinners here with all these relatives crammed in. And that can happen here too. We say grace around this table, and that can happen even in a new place too." Stephen's mom smiled, catching on now. "What else will continue in this new house?" "Well, I can do homework here and remember all the other times I sat here and learned." "Stephen, this table this place, is where memories meet new experiences for our family. Our home is a place where we eat, grow, learn, and make memories together. Even if the building is new, even if we are a changing people, that can still be true of home. Stephen felt warm and comfortable talking to his mother around the table, and his heart knew that he could bring the old memories with him. And in each new place, with each new set of experiences, they would become memories too, as his family created a new home together. Welcome home. Welcome back for the first time. It's good to be here with you. If you are of children or youth age, you are invited to go with your parent, guardian, caregivers to the social hall for youth programming if you'd like, or you can stay here with us. Thank you.
In addition to having a story every week, we are going to have two witnesses from our world every week. We are calling them the ancient witness and the contemporary witness, and they will not only coexist with our weekly story, but they will also influence and inform the weekly message from the ministers. This is another area that as we get into this new rhythm, you will be invited to be the voices of them and maybe even the influencers of the ones that get picked. It's a way of bringing in a diversity of thoughts and traditions and ideas into this beautiful space. And so this morning, I will read to you both ancient and contemporary witnesses. This week's ancient witness comes to us from a series of fragments from the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus. Many fail to grasp what they've seen and cannot judge what they've learned, although they tell themselves they know. All things change to fire, and fire exhausted falls back into all things. Air dies, giving birth to fire. Fire dies, giving birth to air. Water thus is born of dying, earth and earth of water. The river where you once set your foot just now is gone, giving way to this and now this. And our contemporary witness this morning comes to us from the contemporary writer and prophet Octavia Butler. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. I'm so nervous. I had 3 dreams last night. And one of them, I've already told several of you this, was that once the service was done, I ran around and realized I hadn't preached a sermon at all, and I had forgotten to do it. So there's where you're getting me this morning. It's been 18 months, and this is so different for so many of us. I will also say it is the longest sermon I've ever preached. It's 19 minutes, so make yourselves comfortable. But what do you say after 18 months apart? 18 months. Well, you start with, welcome back. After 18 unimaginable, unfathomable, unbelievable long months, welcome back. For 18 months, I have personally dreamed about this moment where I could look out to all of you and make eye contact into this historic sanctuary and see your faces and feel your presence and finally say, welcome back. But this morning, we also know this is a homecoming unlike any other. The reality is we are not exactly the same people we were 18 months ago. I am not the same person that you knew in March of 2020, and I know that you're not either. And this community, this sacred and beloved community, this 152-year institution is also not exactly the same that it once was. We are quite literally welcoming one another back into this next chapter, acutely aware that we have changed and we are still changing. The phrase we've been using, welcome back for the very first time, draws itself from the ancient witness you heard this morning that said the river where you set your foot just now is gone, giving way to this and now this. My friends, the river and the waters that we once knew are indeed gone, and new water has already made way for where we find ourselves this morning. And for many of us, if not most of us, if not all of us, that probably invites a paradoxical reaction as we mourn the loss of what we feel we knew, but we also anticipate whatever's ahead of us. And it's okay. And it is true, and it is good to come into this first worship service with one another with this range of emotions that might feel counterintuitive to one another. Many of us, including myself, wanted to just jump back into what we already knew. I wanted to launch back into what was familiar and to reinvest in what was the most comfortable. This is, after all, our human condition. We want to resist discomfort and reside in the spaces and the places that feel most comfortable to our senses and familiar to our souls. But that ancient river has moved on. And the places we once put our feet is gone, making way to new water, and we are still changing. And I'm reminded of that beautiful poem from the final verse of The Layers by Stanley Kunitz, where he says, I am not yet done with my changes, and this morning I'm here to tell you that neither are we. It was exactly 18 months ago to this very day, 18 months ago, can you believe that? Where we sent out an email from this church that said in all big caps, COVID-19 update, Sunday services suspended through April 5th. 18 months ago that happened, can you believe that? And I don't know about you, but at the time I was so scared. I was scared. And not just for my physical safety and for the safety of those I love, and literally for each and every one of you, but also because, to be completely honest, I didn't know how our church could manage such a transition. But it was only going to be for 3 weeks, right? Just 3 weeks, and then we'll see where things stand on April 5th, right? I mean, come on. We had a lot to do at that point. We had a senior minister to celebrate as he retired. We had a new senior minister to present to the congregation. We had a growing character school again, an invigorating new program that was called Fountain Off Fountain, and a high school legacy trip planned for Washington, D.C. We had a chapel community that was growing in both depth and in breadth. We had a series of social justice initiatives finally taking shape, and we all shared a dream that whatever was next for our church was exactly what we all thought we were waiting for. No. This was not possible. This was too uncomfortable, and it was, quite frankly, too awkward for our church to handle. But I guess we could do it for 3 weeks, right? So we shifted. We threw up this magnificent rainbow and did 3 live stream services from the sanctuary while you watched at home. And we moved some meetings to Zoom, and we eagerly counted the days to April 5th. I remember this gross March afternoon, as most March afternoons are, that our vice chair, Amy Preston, came up to me and she said, "You know, Christopher, I hate to say this, but I read a couple articles this morning." No good story starts there. And there were epidemiologists and scientists and doctors who said this might not be over until there's a vaccine. It could be more than a year. I remember not believing her, but I also remember the way my head physically spun, and my heart pounded, and my soul sunk. There was no way that this congregation, or this world, or this fragile nation, or this fragile young minister could deviate from normal that long. There's no way we could abandon everything we knew, and everything that was familiar, and everything that we so deeply and desperately loved in this church. But every day brought with it the awareness that this was indeed going to be longer than we wanted. So, more of our ministries transitioned to Zoom, and a menagerie of guest speakers submitted their sermons from all over the country in the wake of our senior minister retiring. The choir began to meet regularly on Zoom, and the governing board and their accompanying teams and committees followed suit, and the senior minister search process continued. My friends, together, we learned that we could welcome new staff. We could honor timeless traditions and rituals, and we could lift up new ones. Together, we learned that we could navigate a tumultuous election season. We learned how to sing Silent Night by Zoom Light and how to keep vigil after an attack on our nation's capital and, more importantly, our democracy, and how to pull together as a community during the deeply painful and premature departure of our new senior minister. We also offered a great speaker event, a special organ concert, and multiple pop-up gatherings, both virtually and in backyards. And we pulled off not 1, but 2 summer speaker series, all of which we did virtually. And my friends, we are still pivoting, even today, even on this morning, even on this historic morning in which, after 18 long and unsettling months, this cathedral of love and this temple of peace is finally filled with the presence of those who have longed to be here. We know that everything is different than it was before. We are not entirely the same people we once were. This church is not entirely the same institution it once was. And all of this is entirely new to all of us. We are not done with our changes, and the river's water we once knew has continued to move onward. And if any of you are like me, maybe even this morning, you're sitting here thinking, haven't we already changed enough? Haven't we gone through enough change? When are we just going to go back to normal? My colleague, Reverend Greta Jo, can even corroborate that I've been known to come up with an exciting idea or an energizing proposal only to reel back and say, I do not want to do that anymore. I am tired of changing things. I am tired of inciting transition here. But the irony to all of this is that religion is, and religious institutions are, always and forever will be in a constant state of change as they interact with cultural shifts and global transition and political cycles and, of course, global pandemics. And with that, old traditions acquire and require new and fresh meaning and interpretations and embodiments. This is a theme that happened consistently and chronically through the biblical texts and also through all of the world's great religious streams. And don't you think that in many ways it should be religious institutions that demonstrate to the world how to best embody the cycles of change and transition and not the other way around? It should be religious institutions and communities that draw their inspiration from that ancient wisdom of Socrates, who said, the secret is to focus all of your energy not on the old, but on building the new. The Rabbi Brian Mayer shares that within the theory of constraints, there are essentially 4 reasons for why religious communities often do fight the old rather than build the new. He suggests that for these spiritual communities to be fully open to change, they need to be convinced of these 4 questions. Are the benefits of changing compelling enough? Are the potential consequences of changing too overwhelming? Are the benefits of not changing at all more compelling? And are the consequences of not changing motivating enough to change? But of course, there's a catch. It's never that easy. Rabbi Mayer suggests that it's usually religious institutions that rarely engage these questions, and so there's another avenue through which institutions accept change. And that's when the world's on its head. And then change is sought out. Most of the time, religious institutions, even like ours, feel just comfortable enough that lasting and meaningful change doesn't seem necessary. And so it usually takes the world flipping on its head for a community, sometimes like ours, to make those changes. I see this pattern a lot in the tradition that I come from. In my tradition that I'm most aligned with, we have a sacred text that's an anthology of myths, otherwise called the Bible. And throughout this library of stories of humans being humans, it is clear that it reads like this endless liturgy of people being welcomed back for the very first time. From the turbulence of the Hebrew texts to the chaos of the wisdom literature to the harrowing stories in the gospel and whatever follows in that epistle, the Christian myths remind us that spiritual and religious communities are constantly and consistently on the move, affected by their circumstances, influenced by their surroundings, and evolving in their purpose until the next crossroads of being welcomed back for the very first time all over again. And they are constantly being invited, if not forced, into seasons of change as the result of their own world being flipped on its head. These are ancient communities quite literally traveling through political upheaval, transitions of spiritual leadership, spiritual reformation, new religious boundaries, and yes, even historic pandemics. And it all seems a little familiar, if you ask me. These are ancient communities that think that all of the change and transition and transformation is finally over and that they finally have it figured out, only to find themselves back at the banks of that ancient river that just keeps on flowing. And their world almost seems unthinkable to the contemporary reader, except for the fact that we too know a thing or two about the ways in which a world turned upside down on its head is an invitation to see change as the welcome option. It is a historic and spiritual pattern that reminds me of the contemporary witness you heard earlier. All that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. My friends, we are truly following in the ancient footsteps of the ancestors. You and I and this beloved community that we love so much has had an unthinkable, unfathomable, unbelievable series of transitions of our own here. We have been changed, we are changing, and we know we are not yet done with our change. Together, we have been writing our own anthology of change and transition, and our world has most certainly been turned upside down on its head within and beyond these walls. And many of us come here this morning wondering where exactly we are, who exactly we are, and what exactly normal now looks like. We wonder to ourselves and with one another, where has the river gone? And where is it going? And what is this water then that we need to go into? Over the past 18 months, we, the people of this Cathedral of Love, have held the tensions of joy and anticipation with loss and heartbreak. We have stood at the intersection of faith and hope and cynicism and hopelessness. We have lived within the paradox of believing that this community is already equipped enough to free the mind and grow the soul and change the world, and yet we anxiously wonder together and aloud, but who's going to come and save us? We have been a community grounded in 152 years of faith, rooted in love, justice, equity, and inclusion that didn't know just how much we cherished it and valued it until it seemingly slipped away from us. And with all of those complexities and all of these unbelievable challenges, we still arrive here this morning together with the awareness that this is the very beginning of whatever's yet to come. The awareness that together we are living our history and writing our future. And the awareness that this is truly a welcome back for the very first time. And we are indeed joining our ancestors in this ancient cycle of new beginnings. Charlotte Moss once said that there are two things that make any room timeless: a sense of history and a piece of the future. A sense of history and a piece of the future. She may have been talking about interior design, but perhaps she was profoundly and prophetically speaking to communities like ours. Those places and those spaces with a deep, rich, and profound history that are being invited to change and to grow and to build upon the new, as Socrates puts it. Perhaps our timeless room, or our timeless ministry, if you will, is one with a deep commitment and sense of our past, and yet a wide and open embrace of our future. In the coming months, it will be all of you, the ones who are truly this church, that will be invited to share exactly what parts of our history we want to live out of and which pieces of our future we want to live into. It will be you who has the opportunity to share your hopes and your dreams and your visions of our future in governing board listening circles, and it will be you that will be invited to imagine what kinds of change we are ready to embrace at Fountain Street Church for the sake of our world and on the world's behalf. My friends, this moment, this morning, this welcome back for the very first time is one of the, if not the most profound parts of our shared history together. And it is not just because the doors of this Cathedral of Love are finally open or because we can just go back to normal. This moment is historically profound because everything is new now. Everything is possible, and everything is an invitation before us to daringly and willingly and bravely put ourselves back in the river. This moment is profound because we don't know yet what normal is, but we get to figure that out, and we get to determine it. And this moment is profound because it's going to take all of us to do that work together. My friends, I leave you with some important questions I think we need to start asking ourselves. It's time that we go back to Rabbi Meir's observations about systemic and organizational and institutional change and ask ourselves if right here, at this very crossroads we are standing at, we are willing to decide just how much more on its head the world needs to be before we wake up. How much more crisis, how much more chaos, and how much more urgency is necessary before we acknowledge that the gift of change far outweighs the discomfort we fear. And what more do we need to wait for to realize that we actually don't have to wait any longer? Are we ready to wade into the river once again? Are we prepared to risk vulnerability for the sake of collective growth? And are we willing to be the kind of church that our remarkable history calls us to be, and the kind of church that the future so desperately needs for us to be? I don't think we have a choice, so may it be so, and welcome back for the very first time.
In a moment, I'm going to invite you to join me in a time of meditative silence. But I want you to know that wiggles and giggles, coughs and sneezes, tears, shifting movements are part of life. And therefore, they are also part of our shared sacred time together. So our time of meditation, our time of prayer is not about perfection, but our intention in it. So find yourself in your body. Feel the parts of it that are supported, upheld by the ground, by the chair, by your very own will. Breathe. Fill up not only your lungs, but your spirit. Let the breath wash over you, gliding gently over the parts of you that hold pain, and rippling over the places that you'd forgotten to love. Then let the silence come. Maybe your eyes close or your head bows, or maybe you stare up at the beautiful windows. But let it come not as a stranger, but as a friend with whom there are no awkward pauses, but only knowing space in between. Breathe in. Breathe out. God of many names, source of love and life, spirit of life, be present here today. Be present in this space. Fill this hall with your presence. Fill this hall, the homes, the cars, the rooms from which we gather. Fill them with the love of ages, the ground of being, and with the call of tomorrow. Help us to be present to ourselves. As we breathe, help us to feel ourselves and each other. May our lungs, our bodies, our very beings be filled with what our souls hunger for. May our passions find fuel, our uncertainties find comfort, our discomfort and disappointment find solace, and our dreams find courage. May our presence and our intention make every space we enter a temple of love and a cathedral of peace. And in so doing, may we know that this community is strong enough to hold both laughter and tears. And it is from that place of holy perseverance that we blanket all of those who carry both celebrations and burdens today. Probably didn't fill out paper today, but that doesn't mean that something doesn't weigh on your heart or fill your spirit. So if you come here today with joy, with hope flowing from your heart, I want to name that into our shared space. Just as a cacophony, one over another, name the people who bring joy and gratitude into your life. Let them be present here with us. Can you say their names? Christopher, Melissa, you, we hold all those, and we are grateful for the love and the light that they bring into our shared community. We also know that it's not all joy and rainbows. Others come here today with heavy hearts, for whom the world is a heavy burden. And we are here to lighten that load, to shoulder in and bear it together. So if you carry someone on your heart today who you would like us to help hold, what they are struggling with, what you are struggling with, I invite you to say their first name aloud. If you're at home, if you're joining us virtually, the chat is a great place to share those concerns and celebrations as well. For those joys and those sorrows that are deeply felt, that are written on the tablets of our hearts but aren't ready to be spoken, yet still seek recognition, I invite you to take one more deep breath with me. As you do so, to place your hand over your heart. Can you find its pulse? Hold it. Hold that pulse. Send love out and in. Amen. Blessed be.
Thank you, choir. It's good to have you back. That piece was called Road Home, and the words read, "Rise up, follow me, come away is the call, with the love in your heart as the only song. There is no such beauty as where you belong. Rise up, follow me, I will lead you home." Apropos to today, I think. We have a few announcements before we depart. As Reverend Greta Joe mentioned earlier, we are going to be doing the offering during this season at the back doors. A reminder that the offering is a physical, embodied way we respond not only to worship, but our commitment and surrender to community. And here at Fountain Street, 50% of that goes directly back into the community, into outreach and impact organizations, and 50% of it stays here, and it's what makes these services and these missions possible. So you can find ushers at the back with plates for that. I also want to lift up that with this new season, there's also a new season of learning. Children and youth programs are taking shape already this week, and we have a whole menagerie of adult opportunities as well. The first one is this Tuesday, and it's our own Gary Eberly. I'm pointing to the choir because I know, there he is, hi Gary. He's a professor emeritus from Aquinas College, and he will be presenting a really cool 4-part class on mythology and spirituality. So the first one's on Tuesday at 7. It's going to be virtual, so it makes it much more accessible for a lot of us. It'll also be interactive, and if any of you know Gary, he's a lot of fun, so I look forward to that. A Zoom link will go out to the whole church on Tuesday so that you can access that if that's something you're interested in. I also want to share that on behalf of Fountain Street, I represented all of us in an effort in our community to work on a project to rename some of our city streets. There are sections and segments of the streets, and so it's not the whole thing, but there's a beautiful effort going on right now to rename segments of Grandville and Franklin after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Cesar Chavez. And so our own friend of Fountain Street, Lupe, she's somewhere. Oh, there she is a big instigator behind that wonderful project, and it was my pleasure to write a letter to our city urging this kind of representation in our community. And you also are able to do the same. So if you are at all interested in this very important work in Grand Rapids, I would really encourage you to come to either myself or Lupe after worship, and we will get you connected with the resources to make that kind of representation happen. As we go from this space for this week, I want to lift up that yesterday was the 20th anniversary of September 11th. That's not a surprise, but I think it is a profound reminder of these moments in our shared and collective story where the world turns on its head and we rediscover ourselves. We rediscover our communities and our purpose and our identity. And so in honor of this observance, I wanted to offer a benediction that is a prayer from Father Michael Judge. And you might have seen images of him being taken from 9/11. He was a Franciscan priest, and he was also the chaplain of the New York Fire Department. He was in the World Trade Center on 9/11, and he was in the lobby praying by himself, praying for the firefighters and rescue personnel, and praying with anybody that stopped to take a quick prayer. And he was also killed in the collapse, and he was considered person 001. So he's the first person that was actually carried out and identified, and there's a profoundness in that sacrifice. And so I want to share his prayer that he was offering people in the lobby that day as an invitation for us to go into our week. And I know that he was a Catholic priest, and many of us have different feelings and positions on specific religious traditions, and so you can translate as you need. Lord, Spirit, truth, love, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say and keep me out of your way. It has been a joy and a privilege to be here with you all this morning. Welcome back for the very first time. Go in peace.